Hello, good morning. How are you? It's Art. Good to see you. If you arrive in the chat room, say hello so I know you're there. It's also we can have a conversation as well. It doesn't feel like I'm alone, sat by myself in the room with the cat. Inky is on my lap at the minute, nice and asleep and quiet for a change. She's been tearing up the house and terrorising the other cats this week. I am just going to flick over to the other camera just to show you what we've got set up today. So the drawing cam there, you can see we've got a picture of Alex that we've been working on. I'm going to shift that a little bit to the left so you can see that. There you go. So yeah, we've been doing this for the last couple of weeks. I haven't done anything during the week to it. Oh, we've got a couple of people in already. Good. Michael, hello, good morning to you. Alex, I think that's you, isn't it? Waldorf Statler. So good morning. Thanks for being here. It's always a relief when somebody chats and types in the window. It just makes me feel reassured that I haven't mucked anything up technically. Fingers crossed. Touch anything that's wood. Has been any issues so far. Great. I've even got my glove on. Normally I'm ferreting around in my pocket to try and find it as I start to do the drawing. So yeah, I'm going to carry on with your drawing today and hopefully get this done and dusted. Can't promise it'll be finished today. I do think though I'm going to do another one next week. So hopefully, I think 3 weeks on this portrait is long enough to kind of show you the processes. Let me know if there's anything you want me to cover. If you're having any particular problems in your drawing, if there's a technique that you're not too sure of, or whether you've got issues that you want to discuss and talk about, type it up in the chat room. Because what I can do is I'll have a look at it and think, okay, is there something I can do in my demonstrations that will suit your needs? That's basically what this is for. It is great for me to sit down and chat and draw at the same time. I kind of love doing art demos and chatting about my artwork. But I want to make it functional for you. So if there's anything that you specifically want, let me know what it is and I'll try and make it happen for you, if that's alright. I gave a bit of a last minute tweak to the studio because I was thinking, do you really want to see a shelf full of papers? There's lots of Andrea's card making equipment. She makes lots of beautiful cards, by the way, and sort of files and stuff like that on the shelf. And I thought, I'll just whack some artwork in the background, so hopefully it's a little bit more interesting to look at. So yeah, the other one we've got is a slightly clearer. We can see the artwork a little bit better. I think about doing green screens as well. I was thinking about playing with that and maybe flicking up some images. If I talk about any specific artworks or artists, I could possibly flick that up. It's all very technical, something else to go wrong, I know, but possibly having something like that. So I'm working on that idea as well. This is all in development. Desiree, good morning to you. How are you? So yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to getting this portrait done and we'll move on to the next one. But as I say, if there is anything else you want me to work on, let me know and we can do that as well. It might be just simple demos and mark making or something like that. Whatever it is, chat and let me know what it is. Okay, I think we're all pretty much set up. I'm just going to click this other screen so I can see the chat a little bit better. So where were we? Get my pencils. I say I've been mostly working with these propelling pencils, mechanical pencils, because the portrait I'm doing is quite small. It's only about 15 centimeters tall, which is not a great amount of space in which to kind of really express mark making, etc. So the consistency of a mechanical pencil is really good for something on this sort of scale. The lead I've got in here at the moment is, I think, a B. You can get quite dark with mechanical pencils, more so than a normal B on a normal graphite pencil. I'm not too sure why that is, whether it's just because you're working in a small space, it has that feel of more density to it. But I am drawing really, really lightly. And again, if you notice, I'm holding on to the pencil at the end. If you're not doing this yet, because it feels a little bit weird, practice it. When we're holding the pencil up like this and we're drawing, this is our normal writing style. And it's how we're told to hold a pencil or a pen from a young age, and it kind of sticks with us. And to break the habit can feel really weird, and it feels like you've got less control when you're holding it towards the end. What you can do very quickly when you're using it like this is you can feel the sensitivity of the pencil when it's actually sitting on the page. And what it allows you to do is see, if I switch over to the other camera for you so you can see better, it does allow you to see your drawing as you draw, rather than covering it up when you're over the top of it like that. You can add more pressure to it and still get relatively dark marks, but I would actually use the grades of the pencils to get that darkness for you, and you build up the graphite rather than trying to go straight, say, to a 9B and scribble it in to get it really, really black. If you build up the graphite on the surface, you'll get over that problem, and you'll create a much denser, richer, even layer of graphite. It's not to say that if you're looking for a certain style of expressiveness or mark making that you shouldn't go straight for the 9B, but just think about what your artwork requires and try and figure out some of the elements to it. So you can even write yourself like down a little shopping list of processes and techniques as a guide to help you when you're working through your drawing, just so it gives you it breaks your drawing down into bite-sized chunks, so you're not overwhelmed by the entire image and trying to think, oh, how am I going to do all of this? Or I think people rush or panic or hop between different elements of drawing. They might rush onto a detailed element of their drawing, and the rest of the drawing isn't quite drawn yet to figure out where things are going. And it's like this an urgency to get the finish, to get it done, get it finished, and we have to kind of take that off the table and kind of relax into the drawing a little bit, so you're not kind of going too fast too soon. So start with a propelling pencil and then use darker real ones. You can use real ones, but you can actually get darker leads for propelling pencils. They normally come with an HB. You can get a 2H or an H, and you can go, I think I've seen about 4B in the black of a propelling pencil. If you've got a larger area, this again, I'm working on something specifically small, so for this, if it had a particularly dark area and I wanted it was a large enough area, I would actually use a normal pencil and just sharpen it down till I've got a sort of a refined point. I'm sure most of you have seen sort of the moving up camera. That's not particularly sharp, and just use a pencil extender to kind of pop it into, so it's easy to hold it. To have one, unless Inky's moved it. Yeah. Just use one of those pencil extenders. But again, it just helps you kind of fill things up. So you can, on a small scale like this, start off with a propelling pencil, something really, really light, and then build up your darknesses and with a normal pencil. So yeah, you can swap between the two. The type of erasers that I like to use on something like this would be the mono eraser. Again, it gives me great flexibility. I actually draw with this an awful lot, which sounds a bit weird. It's a reductive process of drawing, so you put something on, take something off, put something on, and it creates a texture or a subtlety in light, etc. So you might need to put a whole layer of graphite on and then sort of lift areas off and then reapply graphite, and you get this lovely kind of sculptural way that starts to develop into your drawing, that you're building and adding and taking away and adding, but it gives you more control. So rather than trying to get everything right first time with a layer of pencil, if you start off lightly with the pencil and then go, well, this bit needs to be even lighter, go back in with a mono eraser, this bit needs to be a bit darker, put more graphite on. You can put highlights into the darkness, which won't be as light as your lightest area on your drawing, and then you get this real quality of tone that starts to build up, which gives you the impression or illusion of something that's three-dimensional. You're creating the illusion of three-dimension, so you have to sort of start to think in a very 3D way. You know, if you're drawing a portrait, for example, the head is a round space, so it's not flat like a piece of paper and that light just hits it and cascades over one surface, you've got to create the illusion that you're creating a three-dimensional head. So you can see my face on the camera, how light is coming in from this side and striking my head, and as it passes over my face it gets slightly darker. Now it's not black here on my cheek, it's a tone darker than this bit, and this bit is a tone darker than where we are, this bit. My nose has cast a shadow on this side of my face. I'm kind of looking at the screen and pointing my face at the same time, and it's all kind of reversed, so it's a bit weird. But yeah, you get the idea that you create the illusion of three dimensions by playing with your lights and your darks. It's the same thing for painting as well. It's no different. You are using colour, but the colours have sort of a difference to them, where you can have a mixture of warms and cools. So if you looked at my face and went, okay, well, it's kind of a coolish light coming in from the window, but the shadows are quite warm, so you start to use the same colour. Say for example it was, I don't know, orange. You'd have a stronger, a cooler orange on one side, and then you can go to a slightly warmer orange in the shadows by adding different colours to it. So all of these things can build up the illusion of three-dimensionality, that you're really thinking about the space of the object that you're drawing. Now, it doesn't matter if it's a tree, it doesn't matter if it's a duck or a teacup or whatever it is. If you are going to a painting style which is more graphic or abstract, think about the qualities of those objects that you want to try and get across. What is it about the object that you're drawing that interests you? What way would be best represented? Is it an even flatness, so you want to break the graphic image down, for example? Then you have to practice laying your graphite or your paint down in an even manner. You can't just slap it on all over the place. You have a certain sense of control. So any aspect, even if it's a very expressive, harsh mark, practice that first, so you build up confidence and muscle memory of how to create those marks. So when you go to your canvas or your drawing, you feel free enough just to make that mark. On a small scale, that's actually what I'm doing with this portrait. Although it's very representational, I'm still looking at the qualities of different things in different areas to work them subtly. You know, how say a shape softly transitions from light to dark, or does it have a harsh edge? Has it got a texture to it? How do I get that texture? And I experiment nearly on every drawing that I do, because a lot of things I've never drawn before. I might have drawn the same person over and over, but I'll put them into different situations and different lighting conditions, and I'll be wearing different clothing that I've never drawn before. But I'm never fazed by the thing that I'm drawing. I'm always looking for the qualities of the subject matter. What is that? And I found an easy way of doing it is if you verbally describe what you're looking at. It's got a scratchy surface, it's got a fluffy surface. It starts to direct you on how you should be using your graphite. So if it's scratchy, you can sort of scratch your paper with a pencil. Is it fluffy? Then I might use a cotton wool pad and lightly dust graphite onto it. And I would experiment off my picture page, just to experiment and play with those techniques, so I can kind of figure out those elements that I need and require for my drawing. So when I come to put them in, I know how to do them. So there are a billion different books out there on drawing techniques and how-to books, and we've discussed it a lot when I do my live drawing classes. I've got a sort of collection of books that I have with me, and it'll be a drawing masterclass books that you'd think has everything in there, and it doesn't. There's just a whole range of different stuff out there and different ways of using it. I don't know everything, and what I love about the classes and things like this, where you might have a technique which you found or you've experimented with and that I've never used, and you can share it. So what I say to you, have a look online and watch videos on YouTube of artists drawing and working, because they'll work in a slightly different way, and you can cherry pick what's right for you and put that into your work. You're not copying them, you're using them as a source of inspiration, because when you use the technique and you have it in your hand, you'll apply it in a different way, and that's what makes your artwork unique. So yeah, Angela, good morning. Camera's just switched off. I'll switch it back on again. Sorry for the close-up of my head there. Don't know if you noticed that. Where is there? You see that on my head? That isn't a spot. That is a cat wound. Inky the cat got very playful, and a closer developed, and then bless her, she's only playing, but she accidentally swiped my head. That's what cats do. You got to go with it. So yes, good morning, Angela, by the way. Sorry, got distracted there. So while I get this camera back up, I still haven't figured out how to fix this. It's an old camera, and it's software that is supposed to sort out all of these problems, but it doesn't quite. One day I'll get it sorted out, and we'll hit the stream without any issues whatsoever. That would be amazing, wouldn't it? I did take a bit of reassurance. I was listening to some expert podcasts and streamers, all talking about the same issue that every podcast, every thing that they've kind of watched, everybody's had a technical issue at some sort of stage, so not to be put off by it, it's just a part of the process. But hey, here we go. Inky is now laid on the cable of my... I don't want to wake her up, she's asleep. There we go. She's laid on the cable of my headset, which means I can't lift my head up. Just give you a quick tour of Inky, who's now asleep on my lap. Where is she? There we are. Here we are. She's nicely asleep in the back of her head. So this seems to be a new spot on a Saturday morning. She is getting big. I think she grows when she's asleep. There we go. Again, the setup I've got, vertical. A lot of you already know this, who have been with my drawing classes and been watching these over the last few weeks. Try to, if you can, draw on a surface in front of you, and not kind of laid back, so you're drawing at an oblique angle. Even if it's to get a cheap tabletop easel, or even a set of books, set your drawing pad up on a hard board, clip it on. If the drawing's in front of you, if again it kind of feels a bit weird to begin with, because you're drawing on a surface that's in front, we're used to writing on pieces of paper that's in front of us. But having it means you can see it better, and it also means you're not getting an obscured view of it, even from the camera angle, which isn't, I'd say it's off at about 15 degrees from my drawing page. You're getting a slightly skewed version of the actual drawing because you're looking at it at an angle. But when you're drawing your artwork, if you're in front of it, you've got a greater sense of control over what you can see, that you can kind of play around with it and use it in your art form. If you wanted to distort, we were talking about abstraction, or something to get a little bit more expressive, you can play around with these things if it suits the purpose of your concept. Something I could talk to you about, or you want to talk to me about it. Do you have a drawing that you really want to create? Something you've been thinking about for a while? An idea for a drawing in the back of your mind, and you're not too sure how to get it out. Ask me some questions about it, and hopefully we'll sort of point you into the right directions of things that you can break your drawing down to and get it started, or your painting, whatever it is. I'm just going to set up I've got my iPad set up just so I can see the image. It's sort of slightly off camera at the minute. You'll be able to see that. So there. So I've got my iPad set up next to my image, so I can see my drawing now on the screen. You can sort of see Alex's portrait on the right hand side, so you can compare and contrast. As I said, it might be slightly skewed because of the angle of the cameras, but you'll get to see what I'm looking at on my screen and some of the elements in the drawing that we're working on. So, if I manage to get this up quickly enough, maybe we should have had this done beforehand. There we are, camera roll. There we go. So there we are, I've got the image up now. So I can literally compare and contrast. For those of you who are living in Northern Ireland or around the North Down area, the Ards Art Centre are hopefully going to be going live with their art classes in October, which is great news. And there'll be restrictions in place regarding how we work, so it'll be one student per table. And I don't know any details as to when that's going to be made available. They're opening up a website, and obviously they've got a Facebook page. I would join their Facebook page if you're not on their mailing list, and just keep an eye out, keep the notifications coming from their Facebook page, because they'll put links up on there for definite, or give a shout out when you can sign up for the classes. I'm kind of looking forward to getting back into a real room. I am going to continue doing this. I will be doing this at a slightly later time at 2 o'clock when those drawing classes start. So not straight away, but in October time when the drawing classes start, I'm going to start doing these around about 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday. For those of you who don't know, I also do a stream called Twitch. It's mostly for gamers, but there is an art section on there as well. And it's a nice community of people, again, artists of all different genres, and all different backgrounds, all different experiences. But there's some really good painters and artists on there as well. There's a lot of people who do a lot of digital art and graphic work on there, but there are some more traditional artists as well. And they'll just stream for hours. They literally stick the camera on and get on with their work. And I've started doing that a little bit myself, and dipping my toe in the water and trying it out. It's a different platform again, so you kind of, I'm kind of thrown into the deep end of what is Twitch and how do you use it and where do you, what can you say, what can't you say. But yeah, it's another platform, and I start doing it on a regular basis. You let me know how things are working for you on, through this. Are you enjoying it? Are you getting something out of it? Is there something else you want? Chat to me and let me know. But in the meantime, I shall get on with the drawing. That's why we're all here, right? So yeah, I'm going to do a quick review about where I'm at with this drawing. Quickly look across. There's slight elements of things that I can see that I might want to change a little bit. Like this shadow under his chin is quite harsh, and this, rather than being a line to denote where the edge of the chin is actually a shadow. So I'm going to take that line and just equally darken down the rest of the area. Now this might be too dark to begin with, but as I darken up the rest of the picture, that should be okay, because we don't have too harsh an edge around our faces, because it's a three-dimensional object. It's not like we're wearing a mask and it's stuck on. So edges always have a slight curve to them, depending on how they've been photographed. You can get what they call high key, which is high tonal contrast between black and white, and sometimes you get sharper images across, say I've got my head turned and you'll have a sharper image across the contouring line of my cheek, as opposed to the background. That's normally a harsh line, but normally when you look straight on, there's a softening of an edge. If I didn't have a beard, say the bottom of the chin, and how that goes around, it'll be just a little bit softer. It's not a line around things. You're just finishing off the first charcoal ever? Okay, Paul Jerome, I love charcoal now. Charcoal's a wonderful medium, and I understand why people have an issue with charcoal, because I didn't quite enjoy charcoal when I was in uni. I found it a frustrating medium because it didn't adhere to the page, and it kept, you literally sneeze and half of your drawing would disappear, or you wrote it lightly and it would lift off. But it's a very expressive medium, and you can get different grades of charcoal. What we were given is that old willow style of charcoal, but there is a vine charcoal which you can get called natrum. It is a little bit more expensive, but it holds the paper really well. And if you use that and compressed charcoal, and there's charcoal pencils from a company called General, they do a wonderful range, but also really good consistency. Using those gives you a real solidity to the darks, and you can get a real lightness with the harder charcoals. So with Generals and Natrum, they've actually got a hard range of charcoals, and I actually, back in my art college days, wasn't even aware of that. Now I specialised in ceramics, so fine art was my thing, and probably fine artists knew about all that. You could get compressed charcoal sticks, but it came in a stick, and I couldn't transition that in my head, and I had to practice with it. But then when I started watching a few videos on different artists working with it, I thought, what am I missing? And I started to experiment with it a little bit more, and now I think it's a wonderful material. Occasionally it doesn't do the real refinement that I can get from a graphite, but it gives a different expressiveness to the charcoal. Plus, with charcoal you can use it with pastels, and you can't use pastels with graphite because they don't sit particularly well together. So yeah, charcoals are lovely. Good to hear that, Michael. So are you all still working on portraits? Or are you onto different subject matters? Just because I'm drawing portraits doesn't mean to say you have to. You can draw anything you want. Portraits has just been one of my things. I'm also working on, I'll show you here. This is another manimal drawing I'm doing at the moment. It is a bird-headed lady in the back walking the street scene with a bird cage on her head, which I've been kind of playing around with for a while as an image, and as a thought I must have had that about a year ago, and I've just been kind of mulling it over and planning it and going, oh, I'll do that, and then sometimes you have to just go, right, this is it, I'm drawing this picture, but I'm learning it as I go along. I'm kind of making different decisions about how I'm actually laying graphite down, and so even my work develops. It's not like an ever ending search to push what you're doing. It's a consistent thing. So what I'm talking about to you is no different than what I actually do for myself. You know, when I'm kind of playing around with ideas for things and ideas for concepts for drawings. Sometimes you can't get it sort of in one go. You kind of have to play around and let it fester in your head a little bit, and you can think about it a little bit longer. So I don't rush even the point of coming up with an idea for something. I'll let it incubate and kind of brew for a while, and I'll add elements to it and take elements away from it, because I refine the idea, and I'll do little ideas and sketches and experiments off page, and then when it's kind of resolved, I then don't have to worry about what I'm going to do when I hit a white page. You know, that fear of a white page and, oh, how do you start this? I kind of work those issues out before I start, so it's not an issue anymore. Desiree is still working on my niece. I don't know when I'll ever finish. When you finish, that's it. That's when you're finished. There's no pressure. There's no art police that's going to kick in your door and take you away from not having finished the picture. You are allowed to take your time that you need, and that's it. There's no I think there's a frustration that builds sometimes with everybody, including myself, where you kind of, oh, I've been working on this drawing for ages and it's really getting to me. I think at that point you're best kind of just putting it down and drawing something else, because very quickly you'll want to go back to that drawing again, and you'll have a clear idea about what it is you need to do next. You can re-engage with your subject matter, and you can really enjoy the process of actually creating it. You know, there's nothing worse of you being frustrated as you're drawing to try and rush to get something finished. I recently did the commission, which I was really pleased about, and the whole process is really enjoyable. Well, I really enjoyed the process of drawing it, but when I wasn't drawing it, I really wanted to draw it. So when I got back to it, I was like really hungry to do the parts of it. You see, she hasn't got a mouth at the moment. You keep rubbing it out, okay? Um, if it wasn't right, you're doing the right thing. If the mouth wasn't right, you need to rub it out sometimes. So, well done. You know, taking that decision to go, oh, rather than going, it'll do, what needs to change? So, just rather than it be about a mouth not looking right, start to think, where does the left hand side of the mouth start? Where does the right hand side of the mouth stop? How tall is that mouth? How far away is that from the corner of the page? So you can get the positioning of it, get the basic shape of it. Is the basic shape in the right place? Before you go into details of drawing lips and teeth and all the rest of it, think about the basic shapes. Look at the shadows. How is the top lip darker than the bottom lip? Is it darker at the corners? Is it lighter in the middle? If you break it down to steps, you'll get that mouth drawn without a problem. You tried your wife's niece's daughter, can't work out the relationship. Okay. Yeah, what is that? Your wife's niece's daughter? What would that be? A niecette? Maybe we should create our own word. It's a niecette. Had to stop because he overworked and doesn't really look like her. Looks like she's older than she is. Yes, you can overwork drawing. It's normally done with shading, where people use the paper stubs to kind of do shading very, very quickly and block a whole part of shading rather than building it up tonally, because it kind of gets there very quick. Sometimes lines that we place things with become very permanent. So if we draw lines around the eyes and draw lines around the nose, they end up staying there, and lines around the eyes especially end up aging a face. So I always think about how you build up structures of shadows. So we could actually talk about that here for this eye, where we've got a slight tone. We know this eye on the right hand side is slightly darker, and all I did was put a whole tone over that area. Looking at the eye there, I can see a bit of a fuzzy line which comes across there, and then I hit the shape of your eyeball, so the shape of your iris, which comes out to about here, and then there's another line which kind of comes down this way. And again, I'm being really light, so if I make a mistake, I'm not pushing this graphite into the page, but I'm making the marks just enough so I can see them. You can't see them. How about we zoom in? There we are. Whoops, there we go. Is that better? So yeah, I just put that little bit of line in there, and I kind of lightly shaded the space of the iris, and I put this line down here. Very few marks can start to tell you where the shape of that eye is. There's also a line that comes across the top, because part of this eye is obscured by a highlight on the glasses. So rather than drawing what people would normally draw when they're doing a portrait is like an almond shape, you can't see an almond shape, so you can't draw an almond shape. You can only draw what you see for a likeness from a picture. What do you put there? It would be great niece. Okay, great niece. I like niecette better. Well, she's great though. So my dad jokes are getting really bad, aren't they? Oddly, it's like one of those police photos which is ridiculous. There's a missing child. Oh dear. So well, keep it for 10 years and then give it to her. just go, this I've just done a portrait for you. Maybe she be at the beginning of a new career. Yeah, well, yeah. I'm sure there's scope to do some police artwork. I can't be any worse than some of the ones you used to see back in the day on Crime Watch. For those of you watching elsewhere in the world, Crime Watch is a program on TV where they kind of showcase crimes and stuff, and they did photo fit pictures. And every photo fit picture I've seen done by a police artist. Now, obviously, they're taking the description from somebody who's been probably traumatized by a horrible event, but the physicality of a face, as in the structure of a human head, never seems to look like the photo fit ones, and it's also an exaggeration which makes them look quite cartoony, and out of the context obviously of the issues that happened, the crimes and stuff, which were very serious. They would just look weird and funny. So I've never quite understood who were the police artists they were actually using. Did they actually go to an artist who understands the full shape of people's heads? I think they do it all by computer now. It's been replaced. Okay, there is a structure line. I'm taking my mark from this line I have here. I'm just going to put a light mark there. And what it does, it creates like a triangle. I'm using the frame here and the illusion of that bottom part of the frame, because you can't actually see it because it fades away, and it creates a triangle, and it kind of goes to that point there. Now that little dot I've put in is so light and so delicate, so I can start that line there and just build that across. And then there's another line which is really subtle, which goes across underneath this eye here, and it stops before you get to the corner. Again, this is all really light and delicate stuff. I'm not pushing in, but I'm just being light by making little marks, because I can adjust those if I get it wrong. There's this darker shadow area just on the right hand side of that area of the eye, so I'm just going to put a little bit of extra graphite on there, and it's fuzzy and light, so I don't want it scratching too hard. And that shadow also lightly goes over the top to create the top of the eyelid here. There's a highlight of the glasses just coming across, and above that we have a line which is actually the eye orbit on the top of the eyelid, which comes down to the glasses here, and then it also goes back this way, so it creates a very sort of thin triangle. So we're starting to see an eye socket and an eye appear. At no stage have I done a round circle and an almond shape, because I'm drawing this eye from this photograph. So I'm looking at the photograph, I'm just breaking it down. What can I actually see? I can only see a line, I can only see a if I kind of maybe zoom in on this picture, if I make that a little bit bigger, whoops, put me back, there we go. You may be able to sort of see what I'm looking at here. There we go, maybe that's a little bit better for you. You can start to see some of those marks and lines I was talking about. The line that comes across here, sorry, get my angle right, the line that comes across there, it almost meets right in the centre of where that pupil is, but there's a slight light reflection which creates a line coming down. I think this line comes a little bit more across. And it almost continues in a straight line across this way, following the shape of the glasses frame. I can only see hand side of your iris. You can't actually see the left hand side of it because the highlight, the little kind of L-shaped highlight that's there. Can you see that on your screen? If you're watching it on your phone, by the way, they're great, but they're quite small. So if you have like a laptop or an iPad, you'll be able to maybe see some of the images a little bit better. And you can hit that expand button and get a full-size screen to be able to see some of the detail. So I'm looking at that eye now. So this shadow comes across there and down there. On the right hand side here, rather than drawing the iris, I'm actually going to draw the negative shape of the white of the eye on the right hand side, which just looks like a little tiny triangle. So I'm just going to concentrate on that shape rather than the eyeball. It comes down kind of straightish and then comes across that way. And then I'm going to lightly tone that so that line disappears, and just make that just a little bit darker. So I've just put like a little wash of graphite all over the iris. I haven't put any detail. It sounds like I'm putting detail in. I'm not putting any detail in a minute. I'm just doing this on a small scale. If I'm doing this on a large scale, this is just large areas and lines and things, and I let them start to construct the shape of the eyeball. I think this comes out a little bit further. See, that's a highlight that comes in there, and there's a little tiny mark here, just where the shadow meets that line. So I'm going to put in. I think I can just lift this line up a little bit. Maybe it's a little bit too low down, so I'm going to lift this line up a little bit. And there's a slight shadow just at the base of this iris, so a little bit darker just there. Your pupil is actually above it, which is slightly darker. And this is slightly darker on this side. So don't get stuck in that too much, because there's a shadow just underneath this eye where I want to put in. It falls down from this shape, comes around to that corner, and makes this whole side of the eye a little bit darker. Now that might look a little bit harsher than the other eyes, and it's a matter of like bouncing between different areas a little bit, so you can start to sort of pull together all the darknesses and the lights. Similar lights have a similar application, similar darks have a similar application, so they build a consistency up through the drawing. So I'll look for a similar darkness to that eye, and obviously it'll be on this side, and then I can look and go, okay, I can see that this is a little bit darker, and build this up. And the pupil from this one is just about there. And there's elements that is darker on this side. So we're starting to get two eyes the reason why they're starting to look like looking in the same direction is the spaces around them. Now, how far away is that space here from the eye? There's little streaks of highlights which I'm going to put in later on. I think this is still darker on this side of the eye here, so I'm going to add a little bit of darkness to that. In general, this whole area is darker than this side, so there's a little bit of a hint of a shadow as that comes out over here. So it's light on this side, darker here. We often think that because the light's coming from one side, everything is light on that side. But because you're dealing with something that's three-dimensional surface, and how eyebrow ridges work and how cheekbones work can shield the light from hitting certain parts of your eye, what the surface of the top part of your cheekbone is like, and how light is going across it. How harsh is the light? You know, it's different if it's a spotlight, or it's different if it's an open window. Excuse me again for trying not to knock the cat off the cushion. Camera's gone off again. Here we go. Just try and make this a bit bigger again. There we are. Under capture. As I say, one day I won't have to do this, and that'd be awesome. So excuse me while I just fiddle around with my computer for 2 seconds to get this back up. Here we go. Dear Canon, please can you fix the EOS utility system for a Canon EOS 700D that doesn't switch itself off every half an hour? That would be lovely. That's my little plea to Canon. Sometimes if you ask online, somebody passes it around and they do actually fix it. But yeah, it might be just that I just need a new camera. Not to say there's anything wrong with the camera. The camera's lovely, but because it's an old one, it hasn't quite caught up to all of the gubbins for streaming social medias and stuff. So, right, close that down. There we are. We're back. Where was I at? Eyes. Yeah. So this is slightly darker in this area, lighter in this bit. Softer tone here. I think that might be just a little bit too harsh as a line, so I might dab that with a pencil razor in a second. But there is a line here which is quite a structural line as well of the glasses frames, which very, very lightly goes across. It's like the inside of the glasses frame. It's a very, very light line. And it doesn't quite join to this side because it disappears in the light, but there is a line of the frame itself which is about here, which goes up, and then there's a line on the other side of that glasses frame which is actually the shadow of the hair in the background. So often when you're drawing lines you kind of think, oh, that is a line of glasses. That dark area here is actually the shadow of your hair coming down this way. I say your because I notice Alex is in the room. And it's like a V shape, or upside down V shape, can you see that? So if I concentrate on drawing that shape and how that shape then comes around this side here, I can refine that just by dabbing it with a pencil eraser. By dabbing it, I'm just taking off the any intensity that I've got if it's gone too dark. If I just dab it lightly, I can lift like a layer of darkness off. So it's like playing with the tonal differences. Or think about it this way: it's like your TV. Back in the day, where we had 3 dials, it was colour, contrast, and saturation. Well, think about it like a black and white television, where you'd only have contrast and brightness. So with my rubber, what I'm doing is I'm adding a little bit of light to it. So I'm sort of turning down the contrast and turning up a little bit of the brightness. And this is all I'm doing is playing around with the lights and darks, even if it's just on a line. What's my Canon model again? Yes, I've got a Canon EOS 700D. It's a digital SLR camera. It's a great camera. I mean, it's a few years old now, but it's a good camera. You just can't quite link it into your computer, so you have to do a thing called window capture. And Canon have a utilities called EOS utilities. Lovely bit of software. It basically means that you can work live from the camera, but the software system just decides to switch itself off, because I think the software in the camera side of it just decides, tired now, don't want to ruin your battery, even though I've got a cable plugged in and there's no battery. Yeah, one of those things. There are other cameras that I'm planning in the future to get, so we don't have this problem, but it's a bit of a frustration right now. Every 5 minutes it goes. I was doing a thing on Twitch, and I was just chatting away to everybody and blah blah blah, because on my camera I've got like a little panel that shows me in the screen shot, so I'm not kind of disappearing off edge. And I was chatting away to that, and I hadn't looked at the computer screen for about a good half an hour before I realised the computer screen had gone blank and it switched itself off. Hopefully that won't happen, because you're very responsive and you'll tell me. Right, so yeah, I might just, while I'm at this, just lighten this a little bit, because I think this has got a little bit too dark on this edge. And again, I'm not scrubbing back to the paper, I'm lightly passing this over the surface of the graphite just to lift a layer off. This is just practice, you know, with how sensitive you can get with something. It's like anything, when you first try it, it'll be maybe too hard or too light, but by doing it a little while in your drawings, you'll develop the sensitivity to really sculpt certain areas, and you'll be using it sparingly rather than just all over the place. Often when we first start out, you get a technique under your belt and you start using it for absolutely everything because you feel like you're getting somewhere, but the truth of the matter is you can't use that same technique all over, so you have to sort of develop more techniques. And what you're really doing is building up a toolbox of skill that you can apply in different areas for different jobs. I'm just thinking about that line as well, maybe a little tad too dark, so I'm just going to dab it. Again, just by dabbing it, I'm taking it down a tone or two. Getting there a little bit. I think that line is still darker though. There. And there's a slight shadow which comes down all the way through that. To the point where I can't see that left hand side, so I'm going to add a couple of streaky lines for the reflections on the glasses. If you notice as well, the white of your eye isn't white on your picture, because it's in shadow. So if I rub that out to be as white as a page, it would be too white, and it would. I mean, the lightest part on that whole entire drawing is a little highlight on the left hand side of your glasses, just where the arm fits the frame, and the right hand side. It's two spots. What you can do in my drawing is I can reintroduce those now, because I know where they're going. I can just dab. Just clean that rubber off a little bit. Do make sure you rub out with a rubber that's clean. You can see as you've been dabbing these things, it picks up graphite on the tip, and when I put graphite on and take it off really lightly, you dirty the surface of your brush or your I'll try to shut this camera, you can't even see it. Let's swap over to the other camera. So, where are we? There. Let's see if this picks up. Come on. Sometimes this focuses. No, it's not going to. Try the other one. Move on. It's supposed to be autofocus. Come on, you can do it. Come on. So slowly coax it. Right, come on. Go to focus. There we go. So, you can see that's got a clean tip. Before I did that, it was quite dark. If you're using it on a very light, delicate, small area, it needs to be clean if you're going to lift graphite off. If you don't, what you'll end up doing is putting graphite on. Even though it's an eraser, if that's covered in graphite, you put it on your page, you'll end up putting graphite onto your page. So just bear that in mind when you're working. Excuse me. So yeah, where was I? Just lifting off that highlight. So I'm doing it a little bit bigger than I need to do it right now, because I can go back in and reintroduce the line, the shadows around it to make it appear lighter. So you can see that's starting to build out, so nothing should really be any lighter than this part of your, on your page, nothing should be lighter than that. Which then starts to beg the question, why is this so light down here? Because this is almost the same lightness. So when you start laying graphite back over your, what you would think is light areas, it starts to pull some of the shadows together, and it starts to sculpt. So even this like little tiny light shadow underneath the bottom lip, and the highlight even is a little bit darker, so I'm going to go back over that, and I am really just sort of tickling the surface with the very tip of the graphite pencil. There's a line there which is probably an earlier structural line, but I'm going to get rid of it because I can't actually see that line anymore. I'm going to lay some graphite back down on that again. And there's a lovely little kind of motley texture which comes across. Now that could be down to the pixelation of the picture, but I quite like it as a little device to break up that tonal shift between light and the dark and going across the front part of that chin. Are you all following this? So I don't know what the drawings are that you're working on at the minute, and I obviously can't see them. But the way I break this drawing down, you can apply it to whatever it is you're drawing, even if you're drawing from life, if you're drawing from reality. The biggest thing about drawing from reality is stay in one place, don't move around, because if you keep moving around as you're drawing from something from life, your perspective of it shifts, and your paper isn't a shifting piece, unless it's something like an abstract where you're exploring that. But in general, if you're drawing from life and you want to capture the image that's in front of you, stay still, so you don't move. What I normally say is you almost have it set up where you're in eye line with your subject matter, and your drawing panel here, or drawing page is here, and you can see both of them with your eyes, so you can focus in on one and then the other, and that way you're going to get things located in similar space and size. It can be called sight size if you actually sit your drawing surface beside the subject matter, say for example bowl of fruit, teacup, whatever, and you can stand back and compare and contrast, and then walk forward and make marks. When you're drawing from outside, you might be doing it a little bit quicker because of light changes so quickly or weather conditions change. Break it down into structural marks of big shape. So if it's a canopy of trees, draw the whole canopy of the tree. If it's a road going off, what shape is that road when it goes off down the road? Is it more of a triangular shape as it kind of goes off into the distance? Break it down to similar shapes and place them quite abstractly into your composition. Then start to break that down into other elements of that which is like what visually interests you. Shapes of shadows within trees, rather than just a canopy of the trees, there'll be different lights and darks in the foliage. Rather than drawing in each individual leaf, draw the shapes of those shadows in the right place, tone them in. So you can build up the structure of your drawing like that. It's about basically putting in the architecture of your drawing first, and then expressing on top of that the marks and the visual information that you really like to kind of bring out. And just think about how light works. Light kind of falls. It's generally lighter on this part of my head. The light's coming through the window in quite a flat manner, but the light is still going to be slightly lighter up here than it is down here. It's very, very subtle. It'll catch a highlight underneath my neck, but this highlight underneath my neck here is going to be a touch darker than the highlight on the top of my head because the light is forward. It's very subtle, it's not that much lighter, but you can see that it's going to be lighter here on the central part of my neck and slightly darker back here because it goes underneath the hair, and then it starts to get darker as it goes around my neck here. So it's the same with the face. Where light strikes certain things, it doesn't strike it flatly, it falls across the shape of it. So elements of my nose is going to have a different curvature to it than, say, the curvature of my forehead. Hopefully the width of my forehead is wider than the width of my nose, so it's a tighter curve. So the shadows are going to be going across a little bit differently than over here. So you can see it's going to be darker on this side of my nose from this point. It's not going to be darker from that part of my forehead because it's flatter, so the light travels further across the forehead. It's not until it reaches about here it starts to get darker, and it's about this point that it gets much darker where it goes underneath my hairline and underneath my hat. Yeah, it's very subtle and it needs patience, you're right. But once you start to see the basics of things, it is actually quite simple. It's subtle and simple, and you can feel confident about building those things up rather than worrying about them. And the biggest thing you've said there is patience. Don't frustrate yourself to the point of not drawing anymore. Enjoy the process. That's what, it is, an enjoyable process, and once you see it as that and you take away that issue of panic and worry, and that doesn't exist anymore, you lose hours and hours and hours of just literally looking at shadows and moving them around and shapes and lines, and you stand back and look at the image and go, oh no, that needs to shift a bit, or oh, that's really good. It almost feels like you're not drawing sometimes, and the images kind of, you're always in control of the pencil, but it feels sometimes like the process takes over and you're kind of holding onto the pencil, watching it develop, and it goes from a thought to your hand, from your eye to your hand. It kind of disengages the brain, so you're not overly worrying about it too much. You're seeing something going darker, and it appears to be going darker in your hand, and at that level, patience, you know how patient I am, but you are actually more patient now than you were at the beginning. There used to be my drawing, well, hopefully you come back, be my drawing classes, and there is a frustration to every student that's coming through my doors has a level of frustration at some time, and it takes time to get patience, which sounds like an oxymoron. You can't just buy patience off the shelf and spray it all over. If we did, it'd be awesome, but we don't. You have to practice it like anything else, and it's telling yourself that mantra of like, it's okay, I can do this again, it's okay, I can do it again, and not a frustration building of going, oh my god, I have to do this again, oh why have I done this wrong, and telling yourself, oh that doesn't work. berating yourself isn't going to make you do it any faster or do it any quicker or do it any better. It will actually start to discourage you. We all have frustrations with, "Ah, I understand why it didn't go wrong. Why did they do that again? I forgot." If there's a case of you're repeating a similar mistake over and over, write yourself a post-it note and stick it on your drawing board. So there's a constant visual reminder. So if you go to start doing it again, you can stop yourself, take a few steps back. But patience is something you build up because you start to get more successful in your work because you do more of it, and the frustrations dissipate, and the patience comes out of the actual practice of drawing. And if you're doing it often enough and on a regular basis, that you're not actually worried about the time, and you're not worried about finishing it. You're worried, you're concentrated on, is this right, yes or no? And if it's when you got that little question, and if it's a no, okay, what do I do next? Do I move this up or down, left or right, or darker or lighter? You build that into your kind of working practice. Your drawing develops anyway because you're practicing it, but it starts to do it in a much more productive manner, which looks like you're doing it faster, but you're actually being more efficient is more of the key. Always, it sort of needs patience. I mean, drawing around, especially. Right, round. Yes, apologies. Keyboard and screen blocks. So I can type. Okay. No, I've had the same problem. I've had a dodgy mouse. Round, yes, round the eyes. I know it's crazy, isn't it? It's almost like predictive text, but it's not. I have had problems because I have like a Wi-Fi keyboard and a wireless mouse, and all sounds great until the connection starts to get a bit flaky, and then you've got to type things. And I have the same problem. I've put round yes so many times because I've talked about this in different areas, and it's supposed to be round eyes. So yeah, round eyes, apologies, keyboard blocks, whatever. Yeah. So eyeballs appear in most children's eyes because we talk about a ball and they see round, and we can't ever see the full roundness of an eyeball. An eyeball's quite large. You know, it fits inside the eye socket, and if you can put sort of, don't poke yourself in the eye, but if you can feel sort of the eyebrow ridge here underneath, just above the eyelid, and where the eye socket is here, just on this cheekbone, you can see how wide that is compared to the eyeball itself. But you got to think there's an eyeball behind that that goes a little bit higher than that as well, because otherwise your eyeball will fall out. So the eyeball is actually quite wide, and so we're only seeing a little tiny slither of the actual eye itself. You don't even get to see the full shape of the full roundness of the full iris, and the way the eyeball is structured. If I do it quick, I don't know if this is going to work. Let's have a look, see if this works. Looks like you've got a dark shadow above your head. It's not, because I just put it up there. So the way I'm sure you all know what an eyeball looks like from old biology books. There's actually a dome, which would be the cornea, and that sits on the surface of the eyeball. But the eyeball is actually this sort of big. This is exaggerated, by the way, so don't, if there's any doctors out there, don't criticize me too much, but you can kind of see how big that is. Maybe it's slightly more curved than that. It's not so domey, but you get the idea. But the actual, this part here, the iris, is quite flat, and light passes through the cornea because it's clear, and falls across a flat disc. So when we look at an eye straight on, we're actually looking at from this point of view. Draw better. Tell I can't draw circles very well. So this whole area is flat, and in there you've got the hole, which is basically the aperture for the light to get into the inside of your eye, so the back of your eye can pick up the light. Um, and it's never a kind of, if you have a look at it really closely, it's not like a camera lens, which is a perfect circle. It's little tiny filaments inside the iris. So light can cascade through the eyeball and be lighter on one side of the iris and darker on the other. On the top surface here, you might get a very light spot, which is just on the surface of the light bouncing back out, say from the light source. So say for example it was a window, so we put the shape of a window in there, and on that point it's really light because it's on the surface and it's a reflection of what's on the outside. So that's the window from the outside shining on the eye, but the light itself coming in from the window is falling across his disc. The eyeball itself, if you look at the eyeball itself, probably that is in a little bit of a shadow because of that top eyelid. So that's probably in shadow. And there might be a little bit of shadow from the bottom of the eye here, and already that starts to look more human-like. But I'm just explaining, sort of, if you think about the shape of something and how light falls upon it, you can start to understand some of the marks you can see. Because sometimes when you're looking at something, you don't investigate it fully, you just assume two eyes. Oh, I seem to have frozen a little bit. There we are. You just automatically go, two eyes and it's Alex. We do that when we walk down the street. Oh, this is also due to European tax laws. Might be another chat, Angela. If you're working on two screens at the same time. That's happened to me before as well. Or you're doing two or three things, you're chatting in the chat room, and you're watching something else and you're typing an email, and so you start typing the wrong stuff in the wrong area. So yeah, it might be European tax laws. So what was I talking about there? So it's completely thrown me now. I've lost where I was. Right, go back to the drawing. That'll hopefully help me find it. So yeah, just talking roughly, loosely there about lights and shadows. When I go back to here, I know it's going to be slightly darker on this part of the eye because it's underneath, it's behind the eyelids, and same on here. And there's highlights that go on the glasses themselves, and there's highlights on the eyeballs themselves. So it's like a layer effect. That was it. It was about assuming what you could see. What I mentioned was when you walk down a street that you really know really well, and I asked you what the colour of the roofs, or what's in the second story, of a row of shops. What's the second story of the shops? Is it a different business? Is it somebody's home? You have to then go, oh, I don't know. But you may have walked up and down that road for your entire lifetime and never really seen what's in that road. You just kind of go, that's the shop, this is the butchers, the bakers, candlestick makers, and you just kind of go, that's where that is, that's where that is. But you don't actually look to see it, you just assume you've seen it. So when we're looking at eyes, we kind of go, oh, that's an eye. You do the circle and the iris, black spot for the pupil. But when you actually look at it, you probably can't see those details because the light is bouncing off your glasses, which obscures it a little bit. So we can start to draw some of those things in as well. And there's a little tiny dot just at that point of your eye, just on that side. There's a highlight of your glasses, which is just across there. There's a highlight on this side as well. And there's a highlight that comes down here. And as mentioned before, this is the shadow of your hair rather than marked. There's a little bit of a shadow here. It's a little bit fluffier, so I'm drawing it in a much lighter and looser way tonally that's a little bit darker. There's a little bit of a line that comes out, both out of the arm of your glasses here, but also beside it here. But this is more of the hair that's behind, so you can see that sort of more triangular shadow. So people got the next step. People sort of talk about things that have problems with is drawing hair. Again, I don't draw individual strands, I draw shapes of the lights and darks, and it's very similar to drawing trees as well. Could you lower the camera a bit? Oh, yeah. See, I forgot about doing there. There we go. There should be a shout button on these chat rooms that just gives you a sort of an audible notification of going, "Oi, idiot! You haven't put the camera back on the picture." That'd be handy. So if YouTube developers, if you're listening to this, again, that's now a copyrighted idea, but you're more than welcome to put that function into the chat, because that would be awesome. Would wonder a session on doing eye type, noses, mouths might be good. Yeah, I can. I mean, if there's the Charles Bargue drawing book, and it's got a picture of sort of a whole page of structures of noses. And it kind of breaks it down. It's a very simplified version of what a nose shape is. One of the reasons why I don't tend to do, whoops, camera's gone off again. One of the reasons I don't tend to do how to draw an eye demo or how to draw a nose demo is that people then try and take that and stick it onto every portrait that they have, and everybody's got an individual nose. But yeah, I can certainly look at some of the structure, like we did talk about the eye there. I might make a little video. We could do possibly a little session on that as well. I add it in to an element of the next portrait. So yeah, okay, Alex, no problem. You ask, I do. Okay, let me just fix this camera utility thing again. Live shoot. My live shoot tends to be a little bit sleepy. Okay, so, okay. There we are. Back up. There we go. An electric shock button. No. I'm not about pain. I've got a small cat that does that. Nice little sharp claw mark. She attacks your face. Yeah, so maybe not YouTube. Please don't electrocute me. I've probably got more chance of doing that to myself when I'm plugging cables into the back of the computer anyway. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it would be funny to see. Sit there. My hair's that long. Look, imagine the hair with an electric shock. I'd have like a great 70s afro. That'd be awesome. Wouldn't mind that. Not sure how it would survive in the windy climes of Northern Ireland. Although today, I must say, it's turned absolutely gorgeous. Yesterday was cloudy and dull, and today the sun is beating through the skies. I just kind of noticed this shadow here. This is what I do when I draw. I kind of notice that things go, ooh, that's not right. It's so subtle, but that little line on the side of his nose just give it a bit more of an edge. And I noticed it was in the picture a little bit. There's a little bit harsher, so just getting the structure of that shape right finished off that nostril, and it wasn't quite done. So just by putting these little marks in, might seem like a flourish or, oh my god, he just made that look right, but it was just an element that was missing, and it was just a line just to finish off where that nostril started and stopped. You can't see the line because it's basically made that shadow shape a little bit tighter on this side, which is really what I was drawing, but it gave the appearance of the edge of that nostril. And when I look at this now, I can start to see there's elements of this nostril which need to be a little bit darker. So when we're saying about darkness is that we're starting to pick up certain areas, I can start to see little elements just to bring them in a little bit darker. I'm not changing the shape, I'm just going back over the graphite that's already there and laying more graphite down. And that starts to play with some of the shadows I've already got here, which starts to build that kind of illusion of three-dimensionality. You've also got a little tiny dark mark just in between the lips. And these might seem like incredibly small marks and are they that relevant? All of these kind of small elements that you see in a face, you make the face individual. So sort of the angle of that line here as it comes down and goes in is like slightly darker here, and then the line is slightly darker here. It doesn't go right the way across mouth, because often when we assume we know something, so two lips together, there's a black line that goes across. You realise it's not consistent. You know, it changes from dark to light to dark to light. I might go and revisit this area and make it a little bit dark again, but we're getting on with this eye, weren't we? So let's do that. So there's a lightish line, which is basically just underneath the eye. Now I can go back in and bring that shadow down a little bit, because obviously rubber's quite, even at that sort of small scale, is still quite thick. I could shave it down with a blade to make it a really fine line point, but I can use my pencil to go back in and redefine the edge a little bit. There's a little tiny highlight in the eyeball there as well. So I start to put these highlights in on the right hand side of the pupil as well. So I just concentrate there. I just start to put those elements back in. I'm really looking at the shapes of where those little highlights and elements are. I can see how it starts to sculpt the shape of the eyes. It turns around here, goes up, and the space on this side, just a really subtle line, just about there. It's a really subtle line, because it links up with this line, which is the top of the eyelid, just where it meets the eye orbit, and it goes up to a point there. Maybe not that harsh, take that back a bit. And then it comes back down this way. So I'm drawing the eye behind the glasses, but with the highlight of the reflections on it. Sounds complicated, but if you've been watching, all I'm doing is making lines and shapes of shadows and putting those together. I'm not drawing an eye, if that makes sense. Just drawing the shapes and the lines of it all. So I might have reiterated this quite a lot, but it is actually just the process of the way you draw, by the way I draw things. Now I can sort of see this shadow that is a little bit wider, so I'm going to bring this shadow in a little bit. And this is a little bit dark out here. This is hair darkness, not the skull, not your forehead. Uh, what's lovely is you've got like a lovely freckle complexion across the forehead there, so that element is really nice, and I want to keep that in. A little highlight here, sorry, dark, a heavier just on this side. It kind of just frames this eye a little bit. Got a bit of a structural line that comes across here of your eyebrow. Again, I haven't put any of the highlights in, but when I start lifting layers off, like I want to do just that one above where your eyebrow is there as a line, as a light line, and there's a couple of lines that come out this way, and I can sort of dapple by playing around and adding highlight, and sort of a dappled effect. I'm using the rubber to kind of lift areas off. They might be too light at the moment, but if I just rub over that with a brush, so I can start to kind of structurally be slightly lighter around the hairline, just around about here, before we get into this sort of lovely curve of your hair that comes across. Again, where I say your hair, because Alex is in the room. It's not everybody's hair. There's a lighter element here, which is this hair, which comes down. Lift that off a little bit, so the cat's falling off the cushion as well. She's so asleep and so relaxed and chilled out. As she's spread out, she kind of lounges across the pillow, and then through time kind of the weight goes towards the back and she starts to slide off. Okay. And there's a lightness just here and just there. And it comes up. So I'm lifting off the graphite on the surface. I'm starting to almost sculpt the shape of the head through creating the lights and the darks. I've left a very thin slither of a shadow just in between those by rubbing away a little bit of the graphite on the surface of the paper, which gives me that kind of furrowed bit you got just with the eyebrow ridge. I think we can make that come around that way a little bit and down. This area has some lovely wispy bits from your eyebrow. But there's also a line just above your eye, your glasses, which is a part of your eyelid. And it's the same on this side as well, so I need to make sure that that kind of matches that one. I think what will help that is if I put that structural line in. And then follow that around the top of the glasses and down this side of the glasses frame. And there's a darker line underneath the frame of those glasses. It goes across the bridge. And I'm getting into quite the macro, the small bits of this, and there's lots of areas of this drawing which isn't quite there yet. Like for example, if we looked at sort of your shirt. Now I could go into the same amount of detail all over this, but I actually simplified the shirt and jumper on the left hand side as well. So I wanted the focus of it's Kathy's picture. Simplified some of the marks on the on the top here as well. And I think I'm going to do the same for your shirt. It's enough to suggest it's a shirt and it's got solidity to it and it's following the shape of your body. But I don't want to go into the macro detail of it too much because it'll add too much focus. So the more something is tightly drawn, the more detail it has, the more that the eye will become aware of it and look at it as a source of a point to connect with. And as an artist, you can play around by softening the focus of other things around it. So, for example, when you look at me on screen, I know, terrible. You'll see some of the other things. They look like they're in focus, but they're slightly more fuzzy than my face is. Hopefully, otherwise the camera's out of focus. But my face will look in focus, and everything else will be just slightly out of focus. That gives you a point of interest. And I want to kind of do the same thing with these portraits, where it's about the people. So I want most of the details in the face to be a little bit sharper, not pin sharp, but sharper than some of the other elements. So if there is a background or if the shirts and etc. But it's not to say that these things are not out of proportion. They still have to be in proportion. So they have to have a believability in their tonal work and their shape, but maybe not have to go into all the details of every fibre of every stitch of the shirt. Do you know what I mean? So I'm going to leave that out there a little bit. I think the shirt comes out, yeah, and then curves back in. So where I'd initially put a kind of a mark down for this shirt, I kind of drew it down like that, and there's a line here which isn't on my drawing, so I need to get rid of it. Again, I'm not scrubbing the surface, I'm literally just picking the graphite off the surface of it. Does all this make sense? Yes? Fallen asleep? Gone from a cup of tea? Oh, by the way, I do have my coffee with me this morning. My coffee cup. This is a lovely cup warmer that Andrea made with my name on it. So, quick slap, sorry. Cold coffee, but yeah. So yeah, I got a slightly darker line going on inside of the shirt. It's darker and crisper and sharper, so I'm putting that line in, and again it's here as well, so I can put that line in. What those harder, darker line will add a very tight definition, and I want it to lift the other information out, so where two things kind of meet, so the collar and the neck, in that dark crisp area of the shadow, then that line softens as it comes out into more space. So I can't have it that sharp all the way through. I need to be sharp at this point where these two things are really close to each other, and then soften it as it cascades around the shape of your neck and your chest. So I can get quite a tightness in some of the details, but it starts to add that believability of depth. That's what I really want to get into, because I haven't got much space in a 15 centimeter tall portrait. I'm not complaining about it. I decided to do it this way so I could fit you all in. But then I am just looking for little nuances and essences of where these kind of marks might be. So collar on there, definitely the collar on this side as well, which I haven't done in yet, so we'll put in there. Again, I've drawn in the shape that I'm happy with. Interesting thing about this, it's got a little soft fluffy shadow, so I'll do one tonal pass first, go back over it again. As it comes out here, it's quite light and soft and fluffy, and it gets darker from that point. Back more in. Zoom in this bit, and then it's much crisper here and harder and darker. Again, it's dark on this side. So the more diffuse, a bit lighter and fluffier. It's darker, but can you see the difference between how soft our light is? As it comes down here. And it follows that line. Now what happens is this line starts to disappear into the actual shadow itself. The line that goes across here is sharper, and the line that comes up here is sharper as well. So can you see these kind of sharp lines and elements start to pull the drawing kind of together a little bit, have a similarity to it. That from a distance start to ring true as a three-dimensional shirt, because it feels like it's lifted off now. It feels like it's more round. It'd be good to see how after lifting we retract it. Good. Thumbs up from Alex. Good. It might. I'm just sort of. So, Michael Jackson typed that in the wrong chat window. Did you? If it's not, don't worry about it. But yeah, guys, I say hello to each other as well. By now, some of you guys already know each other from classes and stuff. I don't mind if there's a separate conversation going on with you guys in the chat. It's quite nice for me to follow in with as well. I was doing a live broadcast on Twitch, and my son Ethan came on as well. I literally just kind of switched it on, and I was just going to do sort of an hour drawing and let chat whoever came in. It wasn't kind of broadcast as me teaching people how to draw or anything, and it was really good fun because there was also somebody from Dublin that joined in, and then there was somebody from South America that joined in, and we were just having this like mad conversation, and it was really interesting. But as I was doing the drawings as well, I was relating some of the things backwards and forwards to it. But sometimes your conversations are a point of real interest, and they're a jumping off point for lots of the stuff that we talk about in art anyway. So don't be afraid just to keep typing and chatting about stuff, and if you're having a conversation between a couple of you, as long as you don't mind it being out there to everybody. Yeah, it's a real strength, I think, of these new formats of live streaming is the conversations that people are having. Not just me with you, but between you two. Hopefully there's more than two of you. Between you in the room, and that's more active. More people go, oh, this thing's going on, and they just kind of pull more people in together that way, and then the chat's busy, and the whole broadcast is builds from there, I think. So yeah, more sharing the better. I just noticed a shadow that is in the centre of this, which I've kind of missed off, so I'm going to put this in. Again, I'm going to build in the structure marker where the shadow is in first, which is like a thin triangular type shape. And it goes all the way from up to here. It's got light areas and dark areas in it, but it follows an axis of this line coming down. This elements of a shirt which comes around there with a bit of a line there. There's a pocket here as well which I want to try and get in. There's a shadow just on the right hand side of just where that button is, which I'm going to put in. Let's go to a bit more there. So put that back in place. Yes, when we brush over with the brush, when we take a shadow off, sorry, a highlight off, to tone it back down again. Sorry, I was doing this bit up at the top, so I was doing like a dappled effect where just to match. I'm not just randomly putting these things in. I'm not also sort of counting how many freckles you've got and putting those in, but I think when I'm just picking off the highlight, it might be too light against this white page, and I'll need to kind of brush back in over again. So I'm just going to use, this is just a soft brush. Get a lot of these brushes. This one's by Graduate, get them from Dale Rowney. Watercolour brushes tend to be quite good, but the synthetic ones, and they tend to be a little bit cheaper as well. I'm just going to lightly go back over that. So it's really subtle. Get a little bit closer. So you can see kind of that dappled effect I've got going on. I'll be too close. There we go. Well, there. So where those highlights might be too light, because I don't want to go back to the white of the page, I kind of want to, it's almost like painting the tone back in. Funny thing is, if you have a lot of dark area like that and you use this effect, it actually lightens the surface a little bit. So I can put some of these marks back in. I can also look for areas like that sort of swirl we've got going on with the hair, and block that area in. I'm just using the graphite that's already there on the page. I'm not drawing extra stuff in. I can spread this shadow out a little bit. I think I've put that line in way too harsh there, because it's quite, I'm going to get rid of that line, because the hair comes out here. There's a bit of a curve and line that goes down there as well. Comes on that way, and the hair comes out that way, stops there. Little wisps that kind of come through. These lines are coming down this way. Let's just try them up. So these are like wispy line marks I'm putting in, are very much similar to the dappled line marks that I put in for the highlights on the kind of freckly area and forehead. They're quite structural as well. Rather than a dark line, you know, to see where the edge of something is, these are kind of light lines. But you can see that I'm kind of following the flow and the shape of the object that I'm drawing. In this case, his hair. But it didn't matter if it was the light of the shape of a shirt highlight. So just putting that little bit of extra highlight on the edge of the shirt, or around that element of the shirt, or there's a little bit which cuts in back that way. There's a lightish line which comes down there, and where I was drawing the other side of the shirt here. You can see me sort of ghosting. I haven't drawn anything in yet, but I'm kind of ghosting where this line's going to go first, and then I put it in. It's a little bit darker there, and then it's a little bit darker there, and this darkness disappears off into this shadow which goes up here. So again, it's just creating the impression of that shadow. It's a bit darker because it goes underneath. It's part of the collar. But it makes this need to be a lot sharper and darker on this side. There's a very thin line. Sharpness to that line coming down. It's quite consistent. So look at that again. I'll zoom back out. Michael, maybe you're right, I do need an electric shock. Sometimes you're left with streaks, so maybe I took too much off the first place. Yeah, it could be maybe just a little bit too. It can get carried away with rubbing stuff out. I know because I do as well. And then I have to replace it and then take it back off again. And I learn from that kind of process of adding and subtracting. But if I did that entirely wrong, just by brushing over it a little bit, it disappears back to what it was before, and I can lightly move back again. So by lightly adding the graphite and then lightly taking it off, I get to where I want. If I put the graphite on too heavy, it's really hard to lift off, but I can build the darknesses up. It's very hard to rub the darknesses out. So there's nothing that's really, really, really dark in that hairline anyway, apart from maybe a couple of little spots here and there, like this little bit that got going on over where the arm goes through into the hair, and little darkish areas and little maybe wisps here and there. But I'm still following what I see. I'm not just making these things up. So the believability in what we're looking at remains. If I just started to invent my own hairstyle on top of Alex's head, it could drift away from looking something that's representational and something that was more fanciful. So there's an element of truth that I want to kind of keep within what I see to keep the representation there. Again, a lot of people go, oh, it's very hyper-realistic. There's a realism to it, but it's not a photograph-like quality that I'm going for. If it is, you just need to continue this process on a macro level and be very specific and not move on until you've got it and then get it. That's just too much for me. If it's your artistic thing, that's fine. But for me, there's enough said with the right marks rather than camera's gone off again. There's enough said with the marks I'm making without going into as I said, the detail of every stitch or every follicle of hair, or every eyelash. I don't need it to be that detailed because there's going to be an entire panel of them hopefully. So again, if you are interested in being in a part of this whole process, these portraits that I'm doing are going to compromise a whole page of people who want to be involved or have been involved with Art Chat. So this, even if this is the first time you've ever watched this art stream process and you want to be part of this, you can message me your selfie photograph. Make sure you're happy with it and it's a photograph that you like, and I'm going to include it into this artwork. Desiree, are you still here? Hope so, because I do need to ask you if you can just send me your picture again, because you're going to be the next one, because I'm doing these in the order that they came in, and I have for the life of me been searching around on my computer and through different messages and stuff, and I can't find it, but I know you sent me one, so I know I've seen it. So if you can just send me your picture again, that would be awesome. So yeah, I've got two other ones. There's two more to do to this page, but what I'd love to do is, if there's more of you, because I'm just going to have 4. So you can see that 4. So yeah, if you want to be part of it, great. I'm going to carry this on until it's done. So depending on how fast the portraits come in, it's something that I'm not only ever going to draw this. By the way, I am going to be drawing other things as we continue with this. But like. Was it Alex you were asking about doing a specific eye, nose, mouth thing? Yeah, we can do that. That's not a problem, we can do that definitely. So yeah, just reading Michael, your message again about the streaks. So yeah, just you kind of put it on, take it off, put it on. Just be kind. I'm always kind, Desiree. And it was a lovely photograph. I thought it was a lovely photograph. I think that'd be lovely, just like Alex there. So yeah, I think we can fit maybe get 2 in there. We get One there, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I got 7 portraits, maybe. It depends on how many get. Another 7 will probably finish this entire A2 page, but it doesn't mean to say that if there are more than that, I can't start another page and we can have 2 pictures. So, yeah. You're going to send one in 2. Thank you, Michael. That'd be brilliant. Awesome. Yeah. And if you are watching with people at home who are very silent and sit in the background, who don't say anything, yeah, they can be in it as well. Feel free to give you a new hairdo. I'll give you a hat like mine. Big hair, comes down the sides. Yeah, class. It's like those apps you can get now, where it changes your hairstyles and stuff and gives you funky glasses from the 70s and a rainbow hairdo. So there's a frame of this glasses as well, which has got a bit of a line to it, which I'm just going to put in, and it's on the side as well. This little square head off the side here looks way too big, so I'm going to take that back down. I think what it is, I've included the shape is including a little tiny dark shadow area, which is about there. And on the other side of it is lighter, so take that away. So, I don't know if you just caught that. Your hair got longer since then. No, it's as long as mine. Switch that camera on as well. Sorry about this. Two seconds while I get this up. One day I'm going to have an assistant to do this for me. I can dream, can't I? There it is. Done. You're back. Yeah, so I don't know if you just saw that. The little tiny square beside on the right hand, sorry. Yeah, as you look at it, the right hand side of the glasses. The square was quite long and rectangular, but it included the shape of the shadow. And when I put that shadow in, I realised it's still a bit too long, so I took it back. It's starting to look a little bit more accurate now, but I'm noticing the shadow needs to be a little bit darker as well. Maybe for a different mode I found a following. Oh, have you got a link to another picture? Let's see if it works in chat. I don't know if I'm quite happy for people to share things in the chat, but I know with some of the chat features I've noticed on other streaming software, it doesn't allow people to share their links. I don't know whether it will allow you to share a picture or not, but let me know if you can share a picture or a web address or something like that. Sometimes they're blocked from being shown. It's just to stop spammers and things like that, advertising, I don't know, sunglass companies and things. Not that there's anything wrong with sunglass companies, but so in the middle of other people's streams sometimes, I've seen kind of how other advertisers try and take over very popular streams, so they just ban it. But I don't know if you can show links from your end. So what I'm starting to do now, I haven't drawn the top part of that frame. What I've done is drawn the shadow line underneath it. I think this whole area is a little bit darker still, so I'm going to put more graphite down here and down here, even into this light area that I've done. So I think this whole area is a little bit darker. This isn't sharp enough yet. Again, there's some, technically this is more of a meatier challenge because I'm working on such small tolerances of where things are. Definitely darker there, isn't it? Yeah. So whenever you're drawing, don't be fooled into thinking doing a small drawing is easier, and if you make a small mistake it's okay. It's actually harder to rectify. So drawing on a small scale has its disadvantages. I think your pupil is back there. So kind of making little marks in the darkness there of where your pupil is. This pupil is a little bit wider. So I've been concentrating on that right eye a little bit. It feels more resolved than the left one. When we first started off, the left one felt more resolved than the right one. So I know we've been kind of dipping around with detail, but even on a larger scale, it's still the big sort of lines and shading in larger shapes, and then breaking that down. Desiree, you got to go. See you next week. God willing, fingers crossed. Thanks for today, really enjoyed it. I did too. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. No stopping timer on the camera. No, I don't think there is. Anyway, I've searched through numerous podcasts and how-to manuals and forums about the Canon issue, but there's no way of stopping the camera from switching off other than something to a different camera. But the quality of the camera is really nice, and that's why I'm using that one. But it may be that at a later stage, when I've saved some pennies, I can buy the next one. But it's the type of cameras that I'm also using for this, I use for getting references as well, so I don't just waste it buying just to make it a very expensive web camera. I actually use them to go out and take photographs with as well, so as a investment it's quite a lot. And it can just wait. You can just deal with me switching it on and off in my levels of frustration. But yeah, we'll get there one day. Shift around and not wake this cat up. So yeah, where did I get with the drawings? Yeah, so talk about the two different eyes. When we first started off, the eye on the left felt like it was more resolved, and the eye on the right wasn't. As we've developed the eye on the right with literally small marks, not much like working hours and hours and hours creating fine detail, but by building around the shapes of other things as well, like the form of that forehead, it started to feel a bit more closer to what we've got from the reference. Like there's little things I can see starting to happen where I know this is a little bit darker, so I can put this in, and how that fades across. It comes up here. I might change the shape of that shadow just to come up a little bit more. And it's darker on this side as well, so I'm going to darken this side of the hair just by going over the whole lot, and then although I might have taken shadow highlights out of there, I can put them back in. There's a slight shadow here. So remember with this part of the shadow and went, oh, maybe that looks too dark, but by the time we start to build this in, it starts to be more believable. So I kind of intentionally made this a little bit too, well, not too dark, as dark as it maybe needed to go, but initially it looks like, whoa, that's way too dark. But as you start to build up the rest of the forms of the shadows, it starts to sort of blend in almost, and it starts to look more natural. This is definitely darker here. Start on the side of your mouth here. We'll take that right back. And this chin. So you can see how these kind of, this side of the eye now looks the same sort of darkness as this, but I know this needs to be dark, so I'm going back in this whole area and darkening it down a little bit again. And that shadow comes across over and down, and what it starts to do is gives me that highlight of where the top part of your eyelid is. Building this shadow up. Where I had that highlight, it was too high up. It needs to come down to about there. So it's interesting that even at this stage I'm adjusting my drawing still, and I've got the flexibility to do that by not nail gunning everything down, going that is definitely there, and drawing harsh lines around it. I'm kind of allowing it to kind of phase in and phase out of focus in certain areas, so I can shift and move and sculpt areas to be where I want it to be. And that kind of freedom takes away that horrible panicky worry about putting things in the right place. It's kind of like nudging things to be in the right place until they kind of settle and resolve. Then when you know they're in the right place, you can build upon the tonality of things and the textural quality of them, and that's what I think will take you through to a more resolved finished picture. But I think what I'm going to do with this picture is I'm going to finish it this week, so you can get to see the end result. I think you're getting the idea how I construct all of these portraits, how I do all of my drawings. So you maybe not need to see the entirety of this one finished all the way through. And what I'll do is I'll start a new one next week. If you're happy with that. If you want me to carry on doing this one, I will, and I can stop this one now and get on with the other drawings. It's up to you. What would you like? I'll let you type. I figured out as well, there's a slight time delay between me talking and doing stuff and it actually being broadcast, and it's like not like a massive long time, but it's about 4 or 5 seconds. So where I think I know people are actively listening as well, typing responses back. It can take time to type a response back. But sometimes I've figured out I've asked a question, I've gone, nobody's answering, and I've started talking again as people are then pressing send. So it's that like horrible time delay if you ever watch a news broadcast and they're talking to somebody via satellite and they start talking again. as the other person is answering the question, and then they stop, and the other person stops, and it's got this like stop-start thing going on. So yeah, streaming can be a bit like that at the time. So I apologise if I talk over your typing. Uh, so yeah, if you want me to carry on with your portrait, Alex, I'll carry on with it next week, or I might start a new one. It's entirely up to you. You guys can let me know, or not, and I'll make the decision. Again, I'm just looking at it's going back over and over and over. Even though I've done this a couple of times, I still think it just needs to be a little bit darker in little places and here and there, and just retouches of crispness as well. Just a little bit there. There's a slight line there, which lets me know that is just where your neck is, and this shadow goes from that darkness. It is much darker on this hand side of the collar itself. And it just breaks over as it gets over that curve, but it is darker. It was along that edge. That's better. Start on Desiree. Okay, yep. Well, as soon as Desiree sends me that through, if Desiree doesn't send me that one through, I will carry on with Alex. But if Desiree sends that one through to me, I will get this one finished in a week so you can get to see the contrast on. You find it helpful to take a photograph after a session to do reality check? Yeah, it is really handy to see your work objectively. And what I would do is take a photograph of it and then walk away from it. Don't even look at it then, just take a photograph of it, or make sure you get it in camera shot, obviously in this in focus, but don't start analysing it, just set it down, because it'll actually make you want to analyse it, and it'll make you want to go back to your drawing. And it's a good way of objectively seeing your work for what it is, and don't judge yourself on it. Don't beat yourself up on the fact things aren't in the right place. I don't look at this and go, oh my god, Alex's left eye now looks really sleepy, and oh, his right eye looks better, but it looked terrible this morning because it looked awful from the last time. If I went along and through my art career ripping my work apart before I actually got to do it, it would be really discouraging. There's an honesty to it where you can go, okay, that just needs to move, that needs to be lighter, this needs to be darker, that needs to change, composition changes, the element needs more to work on it. It gives you a guidance and know how to be more productive with your work and more efficient with your artwork, and it's more honest and it is of you, and it's starting to achieve the things that you want and like in your artwork. That's important. So do, if you're not too sure, you're just doing it because you want to do it, you'll start to get, if frustration builds, it's normally letting you know there's something you're not answering for yourself. What is the frustration? And it can often be boiled down to kind of rushing 3 or 4 steps ahead, and you have to kind of take the time to get there. So enjoy the process as well as the end result. If you're enjoying the process of drawing and you're really sort of getting into it, then the effort it takes to do it becomes effortless because it's an enjoyable process. If it's a chore and a struggle and it's really annoying you, you've got to break it down as to what is it that's annoying you. And if it's the case that you don't like the subject matter, you don't like the thing that you're drawing, stop drawing it and draw something else that you really like. If it's your skill level that you're frustrated with, take the frustration away and break it down into simple steps and build those processes up. So yeah, there we are. We'll go with that. I think we'll leave it there now. We've gone over 1 o'clock, so an extra 10 minutes. There we are. So yeah, this time next week I will have a new keyboard with a new mouse, which will be really easy because I literally have to bang this thing on the desk sometimes to get it to work. And I'll have new headphones as well, so hopefully I'll have a slightly better microphone setup. I'll play around with it because it sounds quite tinny sometimes, and so hopefully the microphone will be a little bit better. Just like the third microphone I've gone through. I had a lovely big setup with a big microphone and it looked all swanky, but there was a horrible feedback sound on it. This is a really old headset. It may be a case that this one works better than the new one that's coming. I don't know yet until I plug it in. One of those things. So you're going to move to a new one as well. Okay, cool. Right, we'll do Desiree then. Soon Desiree sends me that picture. I'll put up. We'll carry on with this one. I'll get this one done during the week. Whatever the majority want. Well, I think the two of you are now the majority because there are only 3 viewers. And I think I'm one of them. So as it's only just us, we made a decision. We'll just make a choice there. Yeah, but we'll leave it there, guys. We'll see you next week. Looking forward to seeing you guys in real life in October. So yeah, keep an eye out for the Arts Centre, and when they post up their event, do it. Okay, it's been a pleasure, Michael. I look forward to seeing your pictures, so we'll get you up on the board soon as well. All right, take it easy, guys, and I'll see you next week.